Welcome to another episode of Chai and Cabins. My name is Rashmi, and if this is the first time hearing about this podcast or tuning in on it, I have my co-host Jen here with me. We talk about all things short-term rentals, real estate, boutique hotel investing. Hey Jen, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good, Rashmi. Just kind of still riding the high from last week's STR Wealth Conference in Nashville and just kind of catching up. But I really enjoyed this week's episode with Allie. She talked about some great stuff, how her story started, and then her journey from then to now having boutique hotel, as well as managing 50 something properties. I mean, it's just wild.
She's amazing, and everyone's the hot new buzzword is seller finance and stuff too, and she gets into all of that, and she broke it down so well. I was like, this is easy. I could do this.
Right? Totally.
She's so good. I think everyone's really going to enjoy this episode. So, guys, tune in. And then, if you guys want to get in touch with us, I am on Twitter and I'm on Facebook too. And you can drop us a comment on YouTube. Jen, if people want to get in touch with you, they're going to get in touch with you.
I'm on Facebook as well as Jen Lev, but you can also find me on Instagram at STR Simplified.
Oh, I didn't know that. Good to know. Guys, enjoy this episode and then let us know if you want us to bring on any new speakers, anyone you recommend. We would love to bring them on. Enjoy, guys. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode. Today we have Allie here with us. And Allie, before we get started, I just want to say you're one of the first people I met from the mastermind that Jen, you and I are in. And this moment I met you and your husband Kyle, I just knew I was in the right mastermind. Like, you guys made me feel so welcome. So thank you. I really appreciate that. It's really stuck with me for all the time we've had together. But I want to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about you, kind of how you got started in short-term rentals, and your journey so far.
Yeah, so welcome and thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on today. I appreciate you guys actually thinking of me. Such an honor. And Rashmi, that makes my heart sing because you are in the right place and you're just so fit for this community, as well as you are too, Jen. And so it just makes me feel so grateful. Jen was definitely there before I was. So Jen and Lev are definitely much more of an OG for the mastermind than myself. So yeah, and always just so thankful for our community and to be a part. But yeah, so my story, I guess I'll give the abbreviated version because I don't want to give like the crazy long-winded one, but I was a high school teacher before getting into this. My husband was a electrical engineer. So like any other normal American couple, we were just, trying to do whatever we could to make our lives better, make ends meet. Obviously, while what we thought by making the most money we'd ever made in our lives. But quickly began to realize that it wasn't what we wanted. So when I was teaching high school science. So I taught all grade levels. I was a part of multiple different teaching communities. I taught 6 different sports or coached 6 different sports. And then on top of all of that, I was a part of different local clubs and stuff. So like being a part of communities was like my thing. But in doing so, the first thing that hit home for me was I missed my daughter's first steps. So I was on a bus to a softball game and I missed her first steps. And it tore me apart. I immediately called Kyle and I was like, I will not live this way. We knew we wanted to grow our family. I will not miss other firsts of our kids' lives. So that was a big thing for me. Well, then, so we started trying to make some changes. So immediately got into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Went down that path. Fast forward a year and a half later, or probably about a year later, thereabouts. Kyle started a new job. It was another quantum leap essentially in our journey. And again, we thought we were going to be making the most money we'd ever made. And well, this job gave opportunities. It took him overseas to Austria, where he was going to have to work for multiple months without being home. And so then he went through his life moment that changed him.
And what year was this?
Oh, great question. So this was between 2016 and 2019 were these two particular events. Well, 2016 was when the year my daughter was born, so it would be 2018 when mine happened, then 2019 when his happened, when he went to Austria. And so during this very happy time of our lives, we thought, again, making the most money, he got pulled away from our family. And that hit us very hard. Kyle and I have been together 18 years, and that was the first time we had ever been apart like that. It's the first time our family had ever, not, I don't want to say broken, that's not a very good word, but just like very distant. And that hit him very hard. And he said, we both just came to that moment where we're like, we are going to figure out how to get ourselves out of this. And so we set a goal then that by the time we were 30, we wouldn't work for anybody else. And so fast forward into that, about that August. So he comes back home 2019 in July. 2019 July, 2020, by that next year, we were flipping houses and we thought that was the way. Then we fast forward to the next year of 2021. Obviously that wasn't the way. And I fell on Mike Strogren's podcast. And so we had just been flipping houses, putting it into a long-term rental. And I was like, I'm so tired of making $400 a month. So tired of it. Like, it's not getting me out of this job and I'm not excited about it. Let's do something else. And I fell upon the podcast and we were about to do another long-term rental. And I convinced Kyle, listen to this podcast, give me some extra money and I'll make this work. And we did. And that first deal, 6 months later, got me out of my job. Now, that one house, we made enough money to supplement for my income that I could stay home and then pursue the path of short-term rentals. And then led me down the path I am today. So from the time that I joined Mike's program, right after that podcast, so that was August of 2021. And within 18 months, we went from 0 to 54 doors. And here we are today. Now we serve the community ourselves and as well as, try to find other ways just to serve the short-term rental community in general. So.
That's awesome. I had no idea about your story at all. So that was really cool because we just met in person, but I feel like I've known you for a while just from, on the online space and everything. So that's really cool. And where do you guys are mainly North Carolina, right? Georgia. Oh my
Georgia.
gosh.
Yeah, no, it's okay. No, it's okay.
No, y'all, earlier Ryan was talking about Myrtle Beach and I said, oh, you mean Florida? And he's like, no, Jenna, Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The little off of direction there.
Yeah. Oh, mom brain.
Yeah. We no, we are in Georgia. So we host short-term rentals in Blue Ridge, Georgia. And then we also own a hotel in Ducktown, Tennessee. It's about 15 minutes from our main Blue Ridge market.
That's so cool.
There's so much to unpack here. I have 500 new questions now that have nothing to do with all of my original questions. But I absolutely love the journey you and Kyle have had together. And I think that's something a lot of couples, including my husband and I, want to be on. Any tips to kind of manage that when you both have a job, you're fixing flipping, you have kids, and then what your relationship looked at that point, and then how did you guys grow into the short-term rentals?
Yeah, that was a great question. I think Kyle and I had a lot of experience prior to doing all of that together. So to add just a little bit to our story, so Kyle and I have been together since 8th grade. And so we're middle school sweethearts. Transitioning into high school, we went to school together and then we got jobs at the same place. And so we worked in a restaurant together. And we did that for I worked there for 9 years, and I think he ended up he worked there for about half of that time with me, because he moved on to a different job, and I still worked there during college. But not only did at that point in our lives, we were working together, we also made the transition to also living together. So at the same time, we were going to class together, going to work together, and living together. And so we had a lot of experience of how to work through a lot of that. So I think that gave us a different dynamic coming into, bridging into as being entrepreneurs and working together. But so far as advice, I would just say that a lot of couples don't have a lot of communication. So I think that it's continually taking the time. So every Sunday we sit down and we talk about what the goals are, right? So we realign. It's we do a weekly realign. And some people are like, oh my gosh, that's like way too much. Like, why are you doing that? And like, but we're just like super goal focused and oriented that every Sunday it's like we're aligning for the week, we're aligning with our long-term goals, and like making sure that what we're doing is serving us. And if it's not serving us, then it needs to be removed, right? And I would say that's probably the biggest advice, because I think if you can stay aligned, then there's nothing you can't conquer together. And then the parts, when you're not aligning, that brings up great conversation, or even if the goal needs to change, right? And I think that's where a lot of couples messed up. They don't stay aligned, and they drift apart during that. And I think that we learned from our parents, right? We're trying to do better. Not that our parents aren't great, but always improving. And that was something we noticed that our parents missed out on, was that communication, and we're trying to improve.
Yeah, it's something we're also going through, and continually growing and pushing each other, right? And as part of that growth. And I think that's something a lot of couples like kind of struggle, especially like you have kids. Like, do you guys talk to them, about like, hey, this is like what we're doing, this is what we're trying? Like, are you open about finances, jobs? Like
Yeah.
what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's such a important thing. Like as we've grown and as we've come into this life, we've realized all the things that we were never exposed to, and we want our children to be exposed to that. And so I use Mike Schrogren's term of work-life integration instead of a work-life balance. So we are constantly integrating our kids into everything that we're doing. So whether we're going to see a property and they're looking at stuff, they start to notice things that we, are looking for. Mommy, oh, that property would be great because look at that view, look at that hot tub, right? And they're like small things that, like, she's 7, so she's looking at that or those things, or she can walk in and be like, Mommy, the cleaner did not do what she was supposed to here. You know, but then also we are very open with, I think the biggest thing is the mindset that we're opening them to. So we have a ton of conversations around financial stuff. So my daughter, she works for us sometimes, and she makes an hourly wage, and then she gets paid. And so then we have conversations when she wants to purchase things. We make her like think about the time and energy she put towards something, and and make her value it, right? And then there's more conversation around like how could we do this? And how do you think you could make more money? Is there other ways? And then she just has like an entrepreneurial spirit. She's like making bracelets and taking them to school to sell to her friends for $1. And so she constantly is around that. But I think that it's more of a growth mindset, and the fact of like their brains are so open right now. And so we're just trying to pour the positive growth into their subconscious. And that's our biggest concern, is making sure we see that. And we have a lot of discussion around service, a ton of discussion. Like, so we talk to them, or especially my daughter, Mommy, what do you do? And we try to like be very careful about the words that we use, right? And so like we serve our community that we're a part of. We also use a lot of like lot of words for gratitude about what we're doing. And we talk about how thankful we are, like when we have a new property to go set up, and maybe we need to go meet a new client, and we talk about that work-life integration. Maybe she can't go, right? So we talk about, well, we're so grateful that Mommy and Daddy get this opportunity, because now we get to make more money that we can then, put towards you guys. So I think that being very meticulous with our language and speaking openly about a lot of things. We don't talk about finances or anything behind closed doors. We want her to have all of that. And that's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like a lot of couples, again, have learned from their parents, right? That like, we don't talk about those things, and the kids don't need to know. But I think the kids need to know. The kids need to know what we're going through, because how else are they going to do? We're not setting them up for success, right? In the future.
Yeah, I grew up in a household where my parents were very open about finances, which is unusual in immigrant Indian families. But they were just like, you need to know. And like, they got me a credit card really early. And like, I never used it because I was terrified about what would happen if I used it. But like teaching kids like financial responsibility and having access to money and like how do you spend it and can you leave it in there and maybe gain some interest? Or can you buy real estate with it? Like just like getting in there, I think everything you've said so far, I'm like, absolutely, like that's what I want to teach our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. We our plan is to purchase, like, moving forward, what part of our like generational wealth strategy is putting our kids as obviously equity holders in our next projects. And so it'll be a small percentage, right? But starting to again create that mindset around ownership, and what that looks like for them, and having those conversations when they're a little older about the equity that they hold in these and what they could use that for, right? Because essentially they could sell back or buy back that equity at any time and put that towards a project that they want to. And we definitely want to have those conversations for them. And we want them to work for that. My daughter thinks that she owns the hotel, guys. She thinks she works there. The front desk is her desk. We go there. She has her little clipboard. She checks on the cleaners. Like, she thinks she owns it. And I'm all for it. And part of me, I think I was just speaking to a new member of ours in the community, Shalitha Colbert. So if she listens to this, shout out to Shalitha. We're talking about, like, when we're talking to our kids, or when their kids are young, and Jen, you may have experienced this too, because I know you homeschool. When my daughter was young, she only stayed with adults. She never went with any kids. So when I worked, my mom or my grandmother kept her. So she was only around adults. And I got so worried for a very long time because, like, when I take her to the playground, she was always trying to play with older children, or she was always trying to talk to adults. And I was like, I'm so worried. Am I affecting her growth? Am I stunting her by not allowing her to be with children during the day? But now I'm getting to see both sides of it, because my son, he goes to a program a couple days a week. It's just a few hours a day, but he's getting the, like, children interaction. It's almost like I'm conducting a social experiment on my children, essentially. So I have found that my daughter is way more mature. And so now that she's around all these other kids, but now I don't see it as in a negative connotation. I see it very positively, because she's having conversations and using words that I never expected a 7-year-old to comprehend and use. And nobody else does either. And everybody's like, how old is she? You know, whatever. She understands a lot of things. So yeah, I think that for me, it is very important to, like, be open and have that opportunity for those kids. So, but yes, I'm sorry. She's going to tell me goodbye real quick. Sorry, I'm so sorry, guys.
No, you're fine. That's funny that you say that. I actually, growing up, so my parents are a lot older, or at least to me, they were a lot older than my friends' parents, because they're like 10 years apart in age, but my dad is now 80, so he had me when he was 43, and my mom was 34 or something. And my brother is 7 years older, so I kind of felt like the only child growing up. And they always had, like not adult parties, but like barbecues and stuff where it was all older adults that would come. And that's just how I grew up. So I really like get that, because I was able to talk to adults and felt more comfortable talking to adults, and felt like that definitely served me later in life.
Yeah, I felt like she was also, like, something I'm noticing, kind of goes back to, again, the maturity. My daughter's able to articulate how she feels. And she's very connected with how she addresses situations, because of how she's very entwined with how she feels. And so for an example, she was able to articulate to me that after she comes home from school, she needs personal time. She has been on her best behavior and everything. That's a big grown-up thing to do, right? We can't even do that as adults. And so that, I feel like that's a very big step for her. So I think that it did benefit her, maybe from seeing other adults be able to express, like, I don't think I want to do that right now. I need to do this. That helped her. Now my son cannot regulate his emotions for anything. Whether or not that's just a difference between a boy-girl thing or because I'm doing him an injustice by sending him to spend time with more children during the day, I don't know. We'll find out. So stay tuned for the more social experiment from the Fugatt children.
Yeah, right. No, emotional intelligence is a really like difficult thing. Like, I mean, I have to work on that a lot still too. So that's really cool that she's already able to tell you how she feels and what she needs. That's
Yeah,
great.
for sure.
Really great. I was going to ask you about, so you talk a lot about mindset and, you know, being grateful and all this. And I'm just like, man, you're so articulate when you're talking about it. Where did you, you know, learn this or read about it or tell us kind of your experience and journey with that part of it?
Yeah. So I've always been interested in the personal growth aspect. So I always just sought it out for myself. Uh, I think a part of that came from, and again, I love my family, but um, I just always felt different than the rest of my family. I still do. They still think I'm unemployed, and I just sit at home in pajamas all day. So, I've always felt different, and so in doing so, I just kind of tried to figure out like what's different. I think that along that journey, I just led myself down the path. And so in college, I took, psychology classes. I took different, elective classes, if you will, on professional development and things like that. And then it led me down a path, and I would have to accredit a ton of my growth the past couple years to just being like directly coached by Mike Strogren and him pouring like that limitless potential into me. And I think that was probably a quantum leap for that. But honestly, like people ask me a lot, and I will be completely transparent here, guys. Um, I have never had a one-on-one coach until 2 weeks ago. I've never had someone do that. It's all just been Kyle and I sourcing our own stuff, and just he has been my accountability partner, and we've just been obsessed with being the best people that we could be, and grateful for that opportunity to grow with him. But I think we've reached, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I just think that the path is you should never travel alone, and we have traveled that path together but alone. And I think we've reached that point where we need someone else to pour into us, and we feel like we've kind of reached that level in the community that we're in, and not in terms of growth or anything, but just like mindset, where we now know that we need an external person to come in and help us. And so we're super excited about that opportunity. But so I think it's just studying, works. Studying, we have read Think and Grow Rich. I just ordered me a new copy for this program that I'm in, so I can, actually like write in it and use it more as a study tool. So I think that's probably the best recommendation I can make to people if they're serious. Yes. I just got really bougie and ordered me the gold one because I was like, I'm making this new self-image, and this new self-image would only accept a golden plated book, and I was like, done. So yeah, I think that's just the best thing. Is just we sought it out. So if you're interested, like seek it out for yourself, but ultimately, if you can't do it yourself, get somebody that can teach it to you.
I couldn't agree more on the Think and Grow Rich. I bought my copy at my favorite art gallery, and it was just one of those things that every time I look at it, I'm like, a painting there is well into the six figures, and I'm like, read this book. I envision myself like buying this painting from this one artist that I've seen paint in like Hawaii and Miami, and like he just has like some insanely cool pieces. But just the little things, right? Like, hey, like this is who I am now.
Yes, yes.
So I wanted to move the conversation a little bit. I think we just glossed over the fact that you guys went from one listing to over 50. That is insane. So let's talk about, what did that journey look like for you guys? You said you started by buying, so you bought your first short-term rental, I'm guessing 2020, 21?
So we bought it 2021 or early. So yes, that we bought early on, and it took us a couple months. It was a complete rehab. So that was our first one. So we did start by purchasing. So I'll say a little bit about that deal and how it started us on the journey. So we bought that deal for $47,000. 2-bed, 1-bath house.
Wait, that's the price of the entire house or the down payment?
That was the price of the whole house. It was a 2-bedroom,
my
1-bath
Dang.
house. Yeah, guys, we were wheeling and dealing at this time. This was going to be our, I think, 10th or 11th flip in like
My God.
almost 2 years. We were like through COVID, I was pregnant and we were hustling. We were flipping whatever we could. Like everybody else was inside and we were outside doing houses. So and this is where we made that transition. So we bought it like 47,000. We actually negotiated straight with the seller. So it was a direct purchase, and we bought it with hard money, used that hard money to funnel it back into the renovation, and then obviously refinanced out and then started renting it. This house cash we pay like all in monthly. We probably owed like $1,000, right? Like $1,000 payment every month. Let's say $1,200 all in. Because then my $900 included my insurance. I think I was $1,200, $1,300 all in. I ended up cash flowing, and like after expenses, an additional 2 to 3K a month off of that 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And I was like sold, right? I was getting $400 checks before. I'm now getting $3,000 checks. Yes, you don't have to preach to me anymore. And I was done. So what we ended up doing was we held that property for a year. It actually took us, and so for all those people out there looking to get short-term rentals, it actually took us 6 months or more to get our first co-host deal. We were just pushing hard. And so it was right after I quit my job, we got our first co-host deal. And so if you guys look at that, I was kind of thinking about this today. I was actually talking to somebody about this today. If you put that into perspective, somebody was like, I got a bunch of no's and I'm just in this like terrible mind space because I got 7 no's this week. And I was like, dude, I got no's for months. Like I'm talking the first 6 to 9 months of us starting this, we got nothing. And then we got our first deal. And then after that, it rolled in. So if you take my 18-month time span, and I had my first one, and then you shrink that down to like the last 9 months, guys, is when like, the shit hit the fan. It just like couldn't go anymore. Like, right. We were just blowing out of the water. So, so we started co-hosting. So 6 to 9 months, and we got our first co-host deal. And then, we went, and now we have 22 properties we co-host. One of the properties is a syndicated cabin. So I'm going to bring that back around to that first property we bought. We held, I sold that property. So remember I bought it for $47,000. I sold that property, for, I believe, $110,000. So, I ended up making in 1 year over 100 grand off of that first property. After the sell and all the income I made off of that. So what we did was we actually took that money and then we were able to roll that into a new project in Blue Ridge.
So can I ask, on a property that's cash flowing so well, you have these great numbers on it, why would you sell? Because I think that's something a lot of people ask, like, what is the right time to sell a property?
That's a great question. I'll be completely transparent. It was very close to the ghetto. And that was my biggest thing. It was like the guest feedback, right? It was like, this is too close to the ghetto, blah, 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 blah. People loved it. And I'll tell you where I made the most money was at the time before people were like really into the midterm rental thing. I was doing a ton of midterm rentals through COVID there. I had traveling nurses. I had people coming to college just to take exams. I had, people coming just for a large industry or an industrial plant that we had there. So I was making a ton of money off of that. But then like the people that would come in for short term, just like some people loved it, they felt great, but then some people were like, it's just way too close to a not great side of town. So I was like, well, maybe this is the time to exit. It's also just not in the market we wanted to be in, and we knew where we wanted to focus. So we just thought it was best to shift.
I love it. What in the world is a syndicated cabin? Because that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So basically what we did was we went in with partners, and we raised the money to purchase a large property, right? So where I went and I had that 2-bedroom, 1-bath house as my first property, we rolled that into a large, 5. It's a large, it doesn't sound very large, but it's 5-bedroom cabin, and with a detached garage and everything. So for the mountains at the time, it was like more of like a super property. We had the availability to do way more with that. As well as you guys know, moving from like a small college town where I can purchase a home for $47,000, and then rolling it into a very large vacation market, obviously my price point went up. So we went from like $100,000 house and we rolled it into a like $800,000, $900,000 house. And so that's what we did. And so that particular syndication was a 506B. So for those of you who don't know what that is, 506B is when you can basically invest with friends and family. And so that's exactly what we did. We had 2 partners on that. We rolled that in, and yeah, made it happen. And now we are selling that, and we've been holding that just for 2 years. And it's hit better projections in terms of return on equity for that house. And so it's on the market, and we are going to sell that. It's currently listed at 1.2. So we'll make a pretty decent return off of that too.
That's freaking amazing. So one thing you mentioned was like you were in the 6-month period where like you bought your first cabin and you weren't like closing co-hosting deals. What were you doing in that time frame? Like who were you meeting and like what got you your first co-hosting deal? Because it's something like so many people, including me, like we just struggled. I was like, I'm doing everything, but I'm just not closing.
Yeah. I think it was, honestly, it was we were so hungry to get our first deal that we weren't, and just exactly what we kind of already talked about, we weren't serving. It was not until we started serving other communities that we actually got legitimate leads that were the clients we were looking for. And so we had been like pushing ourselves so hard, going up to our market daily, meeting with real estate agents, we were trying to sell ourselves. And we don't need to be selling ourselves. We need to be knowing that we are serving others. And that service does come with a price, right? As all services do. You go to a restaurant, you get service, you pay for that, right? But for us, we had to shift our mindset. So when we did, we were like, hey, we're just going to go into all these. And our first lead actually came off BiggerPockets. And so people were asking short-term rental questions before there was a short-term rental piece of BiggerPockets. And we were like, hey, we are already part of this community. Let's just answer questions. And then that's when our leads started coming in. And then ultimately, that is actually what led us to make the connection with the real estate agent that we have now. That has been a huge part of our organic success there. And it just, again, like when you fall into the right service, you serve the right people, then value is going to come back. And it surely did for us.
I love that. So you're managing over 50 listing. Life is great. Why in the world would you go buy a hotel and go through all of that stuff when like life was perfect with short-term rentals? Like walk me through like what happened kind of out there.
So there comes a point in time when, yes, the co-hosting, the property management did get us out of our jobs. So within that 18-month period, I left my job, Kyle left his job, but you start to also think there's more, right? There's more. And just again, like the whole mindset piece, like it's the potential that's out there. Am I living up to my potential? But also, what about like long term? I'm currently providing equity to these homeowners for their homes. And yes, I am making a check every month from them, but I'm not growing equity or generational wealth for my family. And so, yes, now everybody can definitely speak to the part of my management company can be sold 100%. However, it still does not hold the same value as a commercial property. And the other part that we also had to consider is that single family homes, their value, right, is based upon the value of the market, and it shifts. Commercial property does not. Commercial property is held at a cap rate, and that does very rarely change. Okay. Whereas single family homes whatever's happening in politics, whatever's happening around the world, that's what's going to be reflected into the residential. The only difference between commercial at that time is they just may not move as fast, but they're still going to be held at that same value. And so that was what kind of drew us to that. So basically we had that syndicated cabin. Kyle was in a multifamily group. He thought that was the path he wanted to go down. And I was like, hey, what if they had a little baby and it was a boutique hotel? And, you know, we should run little baby short-term rentals. And he was like, oh, that's perfect. That sounds exactly like at aligned with exactly where we wanted to go. And so that's why we did it. And so, now I own 33% equity. And so I'm a majority shareholder of that hotel.
That's awesome. How did you guys find the deal?
That great question. I love this question too. Put it into the universe. So we got very clear. So that time we were like, yep, we're gonna go find something to make us some little short-term rental babies. And we told our real estate agent, and then we were like, hey, who do you know that we can talk to? And so then we basically set up our buy box, right? We wanted something you know, between $1 million or under. We definitely we thought we wanted to start with something small. We knew we wanted it to be in the market that we were familiar with or somewhere close. And so we gave those parameters and we gave it to her, and then we started sending it out to all these people. And we had been looking, but ultimately it was like, once we set that out, within about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somebody came to us and was like, hey, we have this deal. So this deal had been on the market for about 200 days.
Wait, so this was on the market? Like this was something like wholesale, cold calling? No, it was like on the market.
On the market. We did not call anything. We just literally put it out there. And we had been underwriting other deals too. This one, they wanted way too much for it. I believe they had it listed for like right over 3 million. And it just, the numbers didn't work. And so we were like, you know what, look, the numbers don't work, but what do they want? And so this is a very good lesson too, right? So ultimately getting down to, what does the seller want? That's the biggest question. And no matter what deal you're going into, if you can find out what they need or what they want, then there's your answer. You're a problem solver, and that's all any of us are. An entrepreneur is just a problem solver, and sometimes we're just better at it than other people. But if you can solve problems, you can enter into and be successful at anything. So so this particular seller had just purchased another property where it was a campground. And that aligned more with the lifestyle that they wanted. They didn't want the hotel. And so ultimately it just got down to like, okay, how much do you need? And are you open to seller finance? And they were older, and they, of course, at first they were like, I don't know, I'm not sure about seller finance. But once we like actually explained to them that they were going to be getting a check every month, and then upon refi, they were going to be getting a large check, they were like, oh, so, and on top of that, we were going to meet their needs. So this particular property, we ended up seller financing it. It's a 44 key hotel, $1 million. We put $300,000 down because that's all the seller needed to roll into their new property and get started. We got 2 years interest only payments, 5-year balloon, and a 5% interest rate.
Wow, that is insane. Okay, how did you get the seller from 3 million to 1 million? That's a huge shift.
We were just honest. Again, it's building that rapport with them, having those conversations, and we just showed them why the numbers didn't work, why we could not pay what he was willing. And then we also showed them what they would make upon the seller financing, right? So it is a 5-year balloon. So like they're going to make decent payments on, interest only for the first 2 years. So and then on top, so they're going to be making a way more. And when we broke that down and we explained it to them, they understood. And I think that is another big lesson that some people don't know, is like, don't discredit them if they're not trying to come off of their dollar. It's because somebody's told them what it's worth. They're uneducated on what it's really worth if it's overpriced. You need to educate them and be transparent with them.
Well,
I
so you said, so you had your buy box, right? And y'all just blasted it out. What do you mean? Did like your realtor just kind of started hitting the pavement, or what did that mean? Or
Yeah.
Facebook?
Yeah. So we sent it to her. And we asked her to like obviously share it with her people in her office to see if they had anything. And then like any connections, and then yeah, whoever we spoke to as well too. Then we started putting it kind of just speaking to people in our group of like, hey, this is kind of what we're looking for if you have anything. And it just became like again that topic of conversation all the time. So anybody that we'd run into that was anywhere close to the industry, we would just start having the conversation on, hey, like this is what we're looking for. If you happen to come across or like see anything, we also kind of became those people of like, or if you see a hotel on the side of the road that's for sale, or motel, like, hey, here's my contact information, call me. So that's ultimately what we did, and it just spread like wildfire.
That's awesome. And you guys raised money too, right?
We did. So this particular property, we started out at a 506B. And then we actually had to transition to a 506C just because of the amount that we need to raise. So we needed to raise a little over $1 million to do the full gut renovation. So for context, it's a 1960s build, full concrete, 3-story construction. It's a whole nother beast. Don't know what we were really thinking. I had done like, I guess we said we'd come from that background of flipping houses, but I was like, oh, I've done these houses. What's 44 little rooms? Like, yeah, we'll knock that out. It's just copy, paste, repeat. It is not, people, it is not. So just be aware of that. But we, so we go into this and we actually ended up raising almost over half of what we initially needed. So let me back up. So for the 300 down payment, we did a private loan. So but from the multifamily group we were a part of, we had lenders that we had worked with before, private lenders. We had a very good relationship with someone, contacted her, gave her the opportunity, and she went for it. So she gave us the down payment. And then she was so excited about the deal. We actually, I don't want to even say convinced her. She was excited about it in general. So she rolled her capital back into the deal, almost all of it back into the deal. And then we ended up raising almost the rest of the money, or a good portion of it at the short-term rental conference last year. Yeah. So there's a huge value in the community that you're a part of. So when we transitioned to a 506C and we were able to actually talk about the project in public and put things on our social media and stuff, there was so much excitement in our community that when we got there, people were coming up to us. I didn't know. And they were just like, oh, hey, Allie, I'd love to talk to you about the deal. And I was like, hey, and they were like, we've got $100,000. And I was like, oh, and they're, just like, trying to give us money. And so I would say that for those people out there, like trying to go through that, like, don't underestimate the money that's around you. Because we did. And that's why we ultimately switched to a 506C, was because we thought we weren't going to be able to push for a 506B for friends and family. And we didn't have to. We moved it right over, and everything worked out. So we're very fortunate for our community for coming in and helping us push the project over the line.
Wow.
I think we could do a whole podcast on raising money, because this is something like I'm like super like interested in and like passionate about, like raising funds. So you guys closed this deal. You're going this major rehab. What does that process look like? How long does it take you to rehab? Were you guys on time, and were you on budget, or did everything just go
No.
crazy?
In true rehab fashion, nothing goes as planned, nothing stays on timeline. Why don't I talk about the lessons we learned too? So like rolling into this, we were expecting to do a 3-month project. Our first, I know, laugh it up, Rashmi, laugh it up. We had been doing houses, okay? Again, we was like, these is little baby short-term rentals. We got this. It's going to take us 3 months. We'd been flipping houses now 6 weeks in and out. Okay. So we'd got that down, but this was a whole nother animal. So rolling into this, we immediately took it over in January of last year. So we actually closed January 6th of last year. Went in and immediately changed like flipped the entire system operations upside down on them. We stopped taking cash. We immediately changed all of their shifts. I put my VAs answering the phones. I immediately trained them same day on the systems that they needed to use. And so like overnight, the whole crew was like, holy shit, and they also had freedom. So like before that, this whole crew was having to live there and stay there, like to run the hotel. And they were like, oh, and we don't have to go make bank deposits. And I was like, nope, I don't need you here at night. Go home, be with your families. So we did that. We did that for 3 months. We ran it for 3 months because what a lot of people don't talk about is the time it does take you to capital raise, because a lot of capital raising, right, you really cannot do until like you've actually secured the property. So from the time that you get it under contract to the time that you close, and then sometimes it goes after for the full raise of the property, because they can't technically take your funds. You know, you can get commitments all day long, okay? You can have people sign letters of intent, and Rashmi and Jen, you may have been in there too about the hotel workshop where Rich Summers was talking about. You know, you can draw up a non-legal binding contract essentially to say that you know, you are committing to X amount of dollars and have them sign on a dotted line. But that could be months from the time that you're actually ready, because you never know going through due diligence if you're going to have to extend. So no money is guaranteed until it's in the bank. And so that's something that a lot of people do not talk about, the hardship of raising capital. So we took the first 3 months, we ran it as it was, and just strictly started bringing in money, and finished raising capital. We thought it was going to take 3 months after that. So we were like, all right, closing in March. We're going to be back open by fall. It's going to be great. Nope, doesn't happen. Took 9 months. So, and so we ended up opening in October. And we just did our grand opening in January, so all of our investors could be there. But yeah, it was a huge undertaking. I think that I learned, so we had some lessons that we learned. You know, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Always get a sledgehammer in there in the beginning and take a wall down to look at the electrical. And get extremely certified person to come out and inspect your plumbing. Those were the two biggest lessons. Was 1960s construction. What took us extra time, all the electrical, all the plumbing had to be redone. And those are huge undertakings, and cut and drastically into our budget, for what we were planning on doing. But everything happens as it should. So new year, new hotel, grand opening, and everything's running smoothly.
I
That's awesome.
love it.
Yeah, that's great. So how many investors are in on this deal with you guys?
So it's kind of hard to explain. So we have, because I'm gonna look at my board over here. Six, so 7, including ourselves, 7 equity partners. Okay, so now of that equity split, that GP split, Kyle and I own the 33% of the GP split. And then the other ones, it's based upon their contribution to the equity side of the raise. So we did 2 different sides. So we did that equity side. So we have 7 equity shareholder partners. And then we also have a debt side. So basically people had money they needed to put somewhere, they needed to get a preferred return, because, you know, different things, right? Whatever their situation is. So for those people, they're getting a 15% preferred return on their money. And so they get paid monthly for that.
How do you budget for that in like the calculation that you did? Because this is just like a separate line item that you're like, hey, if you guys give me $10,000, I'm gonna give you a 15% return every month. And do you have to budget that into your cash flow? And like, what does that look like?
Yeah, you do. It's very complicated to explain over like without showing you guys. But ultimately, Kyle created a calculation based on the amount that we had received with the return. and obviously took what that month end balance would be that we would owe, right? And we just basically drafted that into what our overall calculations were for the hotel. So yes, essentially, I wouldn't say a different line item. We just created a whole different spreadsheet and linked it back over to that overall OpEx expense and everything that was going to be paid. So we knew what our outgoing expenses were going to be versus profit. But how did we come up with that deal structure? My husband is a mad number genius. Just to be quite honest, it took me a long time, like, to wrap my head around this investing side, because the first time he showed me, I was just like mind blown at the spreadsheet and everything. And I was like, but how, like, who's gonna own it? And like, where do we fall into this? And like, took a long time. But I think, the best way to explain it is, there's an LP side and there's a GP side, and each one basically is half of a pie, right? And so when you take those two different sides of the pie and then you have to share it among those people, that's how it gets split up. And then ultimately, whether you are paying out monthly, whether it's quarterly, whatever, it's all based on just their sliver of that pie. So for those of you out there who may not know what we're talking about, that's the best way I can explain it, is if they got a big piece or a small piece, that's what they're getting monthly, quarterly, whatever they have.
I love that. And then kind of with this split stuff, do they have any handle on your management company, or do you guys just get like a percentage based on your management fee? You guys have full control of operations?
A great question. So the way that we set it up is, so we are, again, just a GP on the equity side. So we do get paid off of that. And then additionally, my management company does charge a fee to manage the hotel. So we charge a 10% fee monthly, plus expenses that are billed back to the hotel. And yeah, so we just literally invoice the hotel, and then the hotel essentially pays us via ACH monthly for that.
What does GP stand for, Allie?
A general liability partner.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep. And then you have a LP, which is just a liability partner.
Do you have a favorite? Do you prefer your short-term rentals over the hotel? Do you prefer the hotel? Like, what's been more fun for you?
I don't want to say it's been more fun. The project itself was long and fun for sure for the hotel. I currently I enjoy the venture of the hotel and commercial side way more at this point, but it's because of the value that I know that my family's going to get. I can also see in terms of how scalable it can be to remove me completely, right? So moving forward, there are options where my company doesn't have to manage the hotels, that we can move forward and just be GP partners or LP partners, whatever comes available, and make monthly cash flow while also creating that wealth for the family. But there are companies, right, that could remove me altogether. And I think that that's what excites me is now my little short-term rental business is, it's growing. And we do plan on, continuing to grow that, and with elite partnerships for our clients. But essentially for me, it's a piggy bank. So I'm building equity in that company right now as my new piggy bank, for what am I going to be able to sell that for? And then how am I going to now displace that equity into something that is going to in turn maybe give me a more infinite supply. And that's what we're moving towards now.
I love it. The one question I had about the hotel, I totally forgot about. How was hiring cleaners? Because I know it's very different. In short-term rentals, you can hire a cleaning company. It's my understanding it's really tough to do that for hotels. Like, what did that look like for you?
Crazy. It is it's very different. We used better talent to go out and hire people for this position. Essentially they were able to like create things for us to be sure that we were targeting the right type of avatar for that position, and then interviewing them and putting them into place. I will still say, just like any other hospitality business, it's still a high turnover. excuse me, I've actually been interviewing this week. We have a busy season coming up. So there is always this like up and down. We'll lose people at, our slow season, gain people at the busy season, just like when it is with our short-term rentals, right? You're just gonna kind of weed out the ones that aren't great and during that. So I think it's very similar in that aspect, but I do think it's different because you are looking for a different type of person to clean at a hotel. Person that cleans at a cabin, yes, they have to be self-directed, but they kind of need to be social because they're probably going to have to, at some point, have to go like interact with a guest, or if a guest shows up early or what have you. And they also need to have just a little bit more like organizational skills and stuff like that. If you're hiring for the hotel, things are kind of like already put into order for them, right? And they really need to be less social. They need to be very detail oriented, and they need to be very like quiet. I don't want to say quiet. They just this particular person is do what? Reserved.
Reserved. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, that's the perfect fit. And because I don't want someone that's going to stop and spend 30 minutes chatting it up with a guest and not able to finish cleaning the rooms. So I think that was a big learning curve going into that. And once we found the right people, like things run smoothly, but it took a minute to get the right people in that place. And it also took a minute for us to get our systems worked out, right? It's a way different animal from a short-term rental to a hotel. And once we did, and we've got a flow of things, again, things fall into order.
Do you guys have anybody on site, or are you running it like you would your short-term rentals where it's just self-check-in, nobody's there on site for them?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Nope. Nobody's there on site for them except when the cleaners are on site. They're available. It's run remotely. So self check-in for guests, they get sent all the information ahead of time, just like they would a short-term rental. And then upon check-in, there is a plaque in their room that does let them know that there's a number that they can call for any questions. Another way that we're able to do this without having someone there on site for things that guests may need is we do have a guest supply closet on every floor. So in the event that the guest needs an extra towel, more coffee, what have you, they can contact that number. They provide them with a code to get into the guest closet, and they're able to get what they want. And then we just have cameras that are monitoring how much inventory is actually taken out of there so that we can keep count on it.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. Are you planning on buying any more hotels?
Yeah, I'm interested. We're in that creative finance path. So we are now interested also into like how I can add value in exchange for equity. And so that's currently the path we're going down, is if I can get into deals for no money, and own part of it, how can I do that? And so we've got some deals that have come our way. And they are going to pan out very well for us. I'm going to put that into the universe. They're going to pan out very well this year. My goal is to have something on the beach. We're currently underwriting and in conversations with some friends of ours for one in Costa Rica. And it's a very large resort there. And then we are also speaking with that multifamily group. They have been a huge supporter of us, and we have kind of become the people that are known for STRs and hotels, and we add a lot of value to that community in that aspect. And actually, the coach for that group reached out to us about a deal that's in his Charlotte market. So we'll see. We'll definitely see, but I'm putting it out there that both those deals are going to pan out well for us in exchange for our value that we add.
So 2 last questions. I've heard you mention masterminds a whole bunch. You said you're in a multifamily group, you're in short-term rentals. What is masterminds like? What have they done for you? A lot of people are kind of curious. They want to do it, but it's so much money. It's expensive, and kind of going like back and forth, right? How did they help you? And what do you think about them?
Yeah, I am a huge supporter of masterminds. As I spoke to before, like I've always been a part of like different communities, and I've always tried to find a tribe, right? So no matter like what stage of life I was in, I was even like the sorority girl, because I was like, I just got to find people. Like I just need people. And I thought that was like the way I wanted to go. And like ultimately like going down and after college, I was like, man, like where am I going to find people? And so I found like different community groups to be a part of. And then when we transitioned into this, I was like, I've got to find my people. So Kyle was not a fan. At the beginning, he thought that like it was crazy to join, like pay for friends. He was always on my butt through college about me paying for friends. And I was like, I'm telling you, like, wise people once told me before I went into like some successful family members that I had. They're like, there's two things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to pay to find good friends, and you're going to have to get on a plane to go see them. And I was like, oh man. So something's kind of like stuck with me and resonated with me. So I was just like, we just got to pay for friends. We just got to pay to be in the group. And it's worked. And I would say like value add is like this path is lonely if you're walking it by yourself. I work in a dungeon. And without my Facebook and mastermind community, I don't think I could be able to have as much success as I had in a short period of time. That's the power of it, right? The power is not just finding your tribe and finding the community. It's the amount of time you're able to accelerate your success by joining those people. Those people have already been through your problems. So why should you struggle through it? Just ask a question. And I would say that those of you out there looking to join a mastermind, first of all, just say yes and figure the rest of the shit out. And two, be active. Like, don't go into something expecting everything. You have to give, and until you start to give, you're never going to get. So definitely do that. I mean, just like any other thing in life, just go out, no expectations, give everything, leave everything on the table, and I can guarantee it's going to come back to you. So 100% masterminds changed my life.
I love that. If anybody wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah. Best way to reach out to me. I am on socials, but as Jen can attest to, I am terrible at Facebook Messenger. So comment directly on my Facebook page so I actually get a notification. Love to connect with you there. I am at She Hosts Blue Ridge. So she_hosts Blue Ridge. And I am on Instagram and Facebook. You can also follow my company, Cherokee Rose Homes, on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like to email me with any questions you have about creative finance, getting into short-term rentals, boutique hotels, you can find me at Allie, ALLIE, at STRSecrets.com.
Thank you so much, Allie. This was so fun.
Absolutely.
was.
Thanks for having me, guys.